you've contributed to the law on the arrest of Netanyahu.
It was absolutely correct to be there to continue the call. It's a genocide, and although people will say that, there are two sides to the story, there are no sides when there's genocide.
Why shouldn't we live peacefully?
Habibi, there is no ceasefire. Have you seen what happened in recent days? There's supposed to be a ceasefire. I'm here. I saw that there were 14 strikes yesterday. I saw that in the days that I have been in the south, there's no ceasefire. It's nonsense.
حلقة جديدة من سردية عز في موسمه الثاني، وسعدتم أوقاتا. ضيفتي لليوم تأتي من أيرلند، تارا أوغرايدي. How are you?
Lovely to see you. Thank you
I'm
for
very
having
glad
me,
to have
Hassan.
you in this season of Sardiyat Az. So you are a human rights defender, and you've worked with the international criminal courts, and you've contributed to the law on the arrest of Netanyahu. Can you start by describing this incident, and what does it mean to you?
It's a genocide. And although people will say that, there are two sides to the story, there are no sides when there's genocide. And it was absolutely correct to be there to continue the call for the arrest of this heinous character. Even when we were there, Amnesty International had a truck outside with a poster of Netanyahu on the side. And the police told them to take the truck away, but luckily the guy who was there on behalf of Amnesty, he knows the law. They know very well how to fight against the rules that are not correct. And so the following day and for the rest of the time for this session of the International Criminal Court, that poster was outside the ICC. And so for the purpose of people actually seeing, very few people have law degrees. Very few people have access to the workings of the ICC or the United Nations and the Human Rights Council. But in terms of the optics, it was excellent that his picture continued to be displayed outside the ICC in The Hague in December.
You've said that the ICC has said that he has to be arrested, yet your government and the governments of many imperial powers, as you like to describe them, actually I say Western powers, refuse to give this description to Netanyahu. He shouldn't be arrested. What happened isn't a genocide. How can you counter that?
There are no two sides to a story when there is genocide. And there are crimes against humanity that should be prosecuted. And from the time of the Nuremberg trials, people should be held accountable when they do these heinous acts that are an insult to all of us, to all of our intelligence, that fly in the face of our humanity. And there are a number of people who should be held accountable for their crimes.
Are these accusations impactful? Germany said the other day that they're willing to receive Netanyahu regardless of what the International Criminal Court says.
Germany has a conscience, and they are trying to make up for the things that they did in the past. And there are many countries who have their interests in capitalism, that they think with their pocket, they don't think with their heart. And so they are blinded to the oppression of people, that so many people in the world, all of us bleed the same red blood. We're all trying to feed our children. And if you look at the movements of capitalism, colonialism, imperialism, it is all for the agenda of those who are in power. And power, there is money in power, and the rest of us, the majority of people in the world, are really struggling to get by. So Germany obviously is trying to shine a different light on their past.
Is all capitalism imperialism, or is all capitalism colonialism? Lebanon is a capitalist country, and it has a strong stance in resisting Israel, for example.
Mm-hmm. You're asking me if all capitalism is imperialism?
It's not necessarily...
people have the right to earn money. They have the right, of course.
That's what I wanted to say.
People have people want to succeed in life, and one man's success is perceived in a different way to another man's success. Earning money is not wrong, and wanting a better future for your children is absolutely not wrong.
And the laissez-faire, laissez-passer is a form of freedom. Why not?
Well, freedom is an illusion to a lot of people. Many, many people are subjugated under the boot of imperialism or tyranny. And there are so many examples around the world of that oppression. So that doesn't necessarily have to do with money. That has to do with a very fractured understanding of what power is. Power can be a blessing, because if you have a right heart, or a good dictator, which is an ideology that one would only aspire to have, there's the ability to make life better for people and to alleviate suffering, to help to make a better lot for those who are oppressed or victims, innocent victims. And if you are someone of good conscience and someone of high intellect, then that should be what your aim is in life, to make a better world for all of us.
So, Tara O'Grady from Ireland, you're talking about equality, equity, fairness. You talk about Karbala, about the oppressed, the oppressor, making the world a better place. And you've decided the path of to work on the path of human rights, which is very complicated, which is very costly. You were blocked from entering to the USA at a certain point of time. Why did you choose this path with all the repercussions that it might have? I might decide on this path because my southern Lebanon is occupied, or used to be occupied, or the Israeli entity wanted to occupy it again, and we refused to do that. The Palestinians might decide on this path. Coming from Ireland,
every element of our intellect is informed by our history. And our history in Ireland has been a long-suffering colonial history. We had 800 years of occupation. Indeed, we still have the territory in the north of Ireland that is occupied by the British. And when you come from a place where my great-grandfather was alive during the famine in Ireland. They call it the famine, but it was a genocide. So we understand genocide, we understand hunger, we understand having absolutely no agency whatsoever, no voice. And now that we have a little, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to speak out when we see others suffering the same. And it's not coming from a place of some entitlement. It's not from, there's no high thinking about it. It is only that we want to give solidarity and to encourage those who are oppressed that there can be a better way, that they can have a better life. And so to join them and to raise our fists with them, or to raise our flag to be seen among the other flags of the world that were here this week. There are so many people in Ireland who stand with Palestine, Gaza, with Lebanon after the invasion of your country and the decimation of the south. I was there in the south in recent days. I saw what they did to your villages. They were razed to the ground, dust and ash.
Flattened.
I saw people going home to nothing. There was nothing left for them. Bricks, mortar. I saw children's toys, a remote control car with a remote control beside it, and the house is gone. But things like, imagine a garlic press, a spoon, an abaya, children's books for school, all like litter on the ground. They came after they bombed, after the ceasefire. They came with their bulldozers and they made the ground flat. And people are coming home, searching through the rubble for relics of their previous lives to put back together. This has only happened in recent days, that they're putting their lives back together immediately. They're refusing to accept the domination of the oppressor. They are looking for spring. They are looking for the harvest that will come. The flowers are already taking root and starting to grow. The weeds are already taking root. And people are absolutely determined that they will reclaim their lives and their homes. So it was really a very sad and horrific thing to see. And there was also a terrible beauty in it as well, because you see the resilience of the human spirit.
What's the reward you look for when you decide on this mission? This very difficult mission. I insist that it's a very difficult mission for an Irish lady. Do you look for an intrinsic reward? Are you exercising your message in life? Why do you do that?
You have a word in Arabic. It's samud. And
persistence,
yes,
maybe. Yeah.
Determination. And that is the core of the human spirit, that when you are cold or when you feel pain, these things remind you that you're alive, that you overcome these things, that you will have the taste one day of a better, brighter day, that you will see the sun, that you will have time with your children, inshallah, that you'll have, you know, the freedom, the liberation to taste food again without feeling that your taste has been dampened, or you hear music, or you hear the sound of birds singing without the oppression of the drones overhead or the fighter jets overhead, that fear of constantly being bombed, or the fear that your children are going to die or be martyred, your family. Every family that I met, every person that I met has had a martyr in their family, or someone, a best friend from childhood, who was killed in recent months. This is not a war of the past. This is a current, present war. It's an imminent, present danger all of the time that you are living through. And the Western prism of understanding that has been poisoned and skewed by corporate media, we have to change that. And social media is the way that people are actually seeing the truth. And it's, you know, for all of the criticism for social media, for the criticism for the artificial intelligence, there are good things too. It helps us, for example, when you have an interviewee who speaks a language, a certain language that is not necessarily the language of the audience, there are captions underneath, and you can go and edit the captions so that other people will understand.
Yeah. So, Tara, I understand when you've given the example of the colonization of the UK to Ireland, and the story that you've lived. In addition to the other story, which I know, if you permit me to if you allow me to share it, you've survived cancer. So you think that you deserved living. This helps you to identify with the people whom you think they deserve living in a better way. That's why you can identify with them more. You have this empathy with them. You want to support them to live peacefully. Is it part of does your history, your personal history, your nation's history dictate on you your mission?
I don't think anybody deserves to live. I think that, you know, there is something miraculous about life, okay? So if you consider just in the biological terms, the fact that the DNA that comes in your life, the coupling of individuals that had to come together through many, many generations in history, the fact that you are even here is a miracle in itself, right? So there's something, for me, it's a spiritual thing that has happened, that I'm even here. I had a whole life before I had cancer. I had cancer when I was 40. I had a whole life beforehand. And then I had cancer. And cancer gives you, yes, it's a cruel thing, but it's indiscriminate. Just as indiscriminate as so many things in life, but I survived. I was blessed to survive. And yes, it has definitely inspired my life. But at the time that I was diagnosed with cancer, I was supposed to go to Bahrain that year to monitor the protests and the crackdown against the peaceful protesters after the Pearl Revolution in 2011. 3 days before I was supposed to go to Bahrain, I was diagnosed. The hospital called and said, "You're not going anywhere, Tara, not for a while." So I took inspiration from the people that I was fighting with, not that I was fighting for, that I was fighting with.
It's a common mission, yeah?
Right. They were being tortured for hatred and cruelty and revenge, and I was being tortured so that I could be healthy again. My perspective completely changed. And the silver medicine that they give you when you have cancer, for me, it was a golden elixir of life. I was delighted to have the opportunity, maybe to live longer, to do more to help people.
So in this particular example, rather than you inspiring and supporting the Bahrainis, their example was an inspiration.
Entirely.
For you,
They saved my life. They saved my life. The Bahraini people saved my life.
Wow. You visited Beirut 4 times.
Yes, I have.
Why is this attachment with Beirut?
In 1978, one of my mother's cousins came here. He was in the Irish Army. And he...
47 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, he did bomb detonation and explosive ordnance. He would go into minefields and he would take the bodies of children from minefields who had gone out to play. And I was 8 years old. Wow. And, you know, in Ireland, we don't protect our children from reality. We tell them about reality because the world is cruel, so we need to introduce them to the world. Yeah, we need to introduce them to pain in a gentle way because the world is much more cruel than we would ever be to our children. So he would tell us about these stories, and I was very struck that I would go out to play in the day, and it never even occurred to me that something would happen, that I would not go home. So I felt for the children in Lebanon. And then from that time, I have always been interested in the Middle East, what they call the Middle East. These maps that they imposed on your region from the Sykes-Picot Agreement.
Yeah,
it's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's been imposed upon the region, and this region is about clans and tribes and peoples. It's a very fluid map that you have here. It's got nothing to do with what the West imposed upon you. So I was always very interested in this region, and the fact that I could come here for work was wonderful to me. I pinched myself the first time that I came, and now this 4th visit, I have had the wonderful opportunity to visit people that I know in the South and to spend time with people that I've cared for so long. It's a great honor for me to be here, particularly in these days when it's a momentous time for Lebanon. And Syed Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, to be here for his funeral, was an immense honor to be here.
Wow. So you're here, and Syed Hassan Nasrallah was killed, and many of the top leaders of this Lebanese resistance movement were killed. Many top leaders of the Palestinian resistance movements were killed as well. More than 100,000 people were injured, were killed in Palestine and in Lebanon. And you're still fighting for these resistance movements. How do you see the future of these resistance movements after all this devastation, after all this cruelty of Israel, the support that it's getting from the imperial power? Are you optimistic towards the future of these resistance movements, or shall we go for peace, since you are an advocate for peace, actually? So where do you stand?
So my work is about mobilizing civil society in a non-violent way. If you take a young man or a young woman, and if they're desperate and they have no way to defend themselves except to resort to weapons, if you're going to ask them to give up their weapons and empty their hands, you must give them something in return. So you must build their capacity to have some agency against the power. And in order to do that, we're informed again by history. History informs every element of the sciences. And in Ireland, our history was a violent history. Irish history is long and brutal and hard. And without society, we live short, brutal lives and chaos. We had 1916, we had our revolution. It was not a popular revolution. They were ridiculed and vilified by the people.
Yeah, it was during the First World War. I guess,
so many people. It was right before the First World War when things were heating up. 1916.
Yeah, in between the First World War, between 1914 and 1918, I guess the First World War. Yeah.
So many people in Ireland were in the war, and they were taking money to be part of the British Army. There were Irish regiments. But these people in Ireland who were resisting and had our uprising, they were told, what are you doing? We don't want to leave the British. We get a lot of good things from them. Our people are getting bread because they're fighting with the British. And so they were ridiculed. But the IRA at the time, my grandfather was a member of the old IRA, the Dublin Brigade. They fought. They knew that it would not be in their generation, but that it would be in years to come, looking towards the future. And the people who were in the IRA at the time, the terrorists at the time, now, years later, generations later, they're part of our government, you know. They form political parties who are part of our government. It's legitimized. So
Hezbollah is a legitimate political movement in Lebanon, and you're saying about peaceful transition. The war was ended in the presence of the committee, which represents 5 top countries. So there is this capacity building to prepare us to peace. Why shall we resort to resistance in this case?
I'm not understanding the question. You'll have to rephrase it for me.
I'm playing the role of the
devil's advocate
now.
Okay.
So you're saying that people should not, resistance movement should not give their weapons if there is no better alternative. So there was a committee representing 5 top countries from the world, from the Arab world, and from Europe and the US as well, to end this war, to prepare us to this ceasefire. Why shouldn't we live peacefully ever after this ceasefire?
Habibi, there is no ceasefire. Have you seen what happened in recent days? There's supposed to be a ceasefire. I'm here. I saw that there were 14 strikes yesterday. I saw that in the days that I've been in the south, there's no ceasefire. It's nonsense. It's continuing.
So this continues on legitimizing the resistance, you mean?
Absolutely, because we have a right to defend ourselves, right? If you're being assailed in your home and your family are being killed, you have a right to defend yourself. You don't just bow your head and go to the slaughter.
Some might say that it's very costly to keep on defending yourself. It's very costly to go again into another 7th of October in Palestine. Can we tolerate this cost?
There's a red price that's paid for every grain of sand that you have in Lebanon. The cost of each grain of sand has been so high for you. I see no way that the Lebanese people are going to give up a grain of sand to the oppressors. And the Palestinian resistance, I met a girl today who is a 3rd generation refugee, Palestinian refugee here in Lebanon. And how can you accept that that's a way of life? How can you accept that that's going to continue for your children? You can't accept that. Absolutely not. It's completely understandable that you defend yourselves, that you want better for your children, better education, better health, access to healthcare and education. They're human rights. Dignity is a human right. The ability to demonstrate, to join political parties, to gather in the streets and to protest, they're human rights. And, you know, human rights are really written by the West, right? So let's feed them back their own medicine.
So you're optimistic regarding the future of the resistance movements in the region?
What alternative is there? Do you have an alternative to being optimistic? It's not a naivety or an ignorance or an innocence. You see how the world works. You see how history works. All of the empires fall. All of the tyrants fall eventually. And, you know, the writing is on the wall on this.
What were the emotions that you were left with attending the funeral of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah?
I was at the very front at the funeral yesterday, and I was separated from everyone, and I had the Irish flag with me. I don't represent all of the Irish people. I don't represent anybody really but myself, but I have the right to lift my flag. I have the right to raise it. My family have paid a price too. I'm not one of those what's called a plastic paddy. I'm accused of being a Paddystinian. I'm proud to be a Paddystinian. Great. I'm on the right side of history on this. I was being interviewed at the time that the jets flew overhead in an effort to intimidate or to remind everyone that they're there.
We as Lebanese weren't intimidated
because as Irish, I wasn't intimidated. Not at all.
Okay.
There were 1.4 million people there. I made my peace with God when I left Ireland. I knew there's a possibility that we will go down today. But, you know, we're here. We want to show that we're resisting, we're with you. And the emotions that I felt... I felt really privileged to be here. I felt privileged to be invited, to be able to attend the funeral was, you know, the equivalent of being able to join the funeral cavalcade for Bobby Sands or Michael Collins, you know, the heroes in our history, in our past. And, you know, I was really proud to be here. And then I was on my feet for 14 hours yesterday. I walked with the cortege from the funeral, the ceremony of the funeral, out to where the mausoleum is, where he is now resting in peace, inshallah. And the way that people were behaving, the beautiful atmosphere in the street of shared solidarity, and, you know, people were standing giving water, they were giving small cakes or fruit, you know, they were like Shayer, who are, if you know about Karbala and you have been on pilgrimage to Imam Hussein's shrine in Karbala, the outpouring of 20 million people going each year on this incredible pilgrimage to this phenomenal hero of history who was the epitome of resistance, of not giving in to the oppressor, of raising victims, Imam Hussein, Labaik Ya Hussein, of helping people to be elevated out of their suffering, of holding the covenant, of holding the promise for the covenant and, you know, the integrity of that. And it was beautiful to be there, to witness the people of Lebanon, welcoming the international community from all over the world to join in the funeral procession. It was the closest to being on holy ground. The feeling of people, it was a flow of humanity. It was actually really beautiful to be here yesterday.
So you felt that you lived Karbala.
Absolutely.
During this
It was a beautiful
And you've been to Karbala 4 times.
4 times.
And there is a strong connection between you and Karbala. It means a lot
absolutely.
to you.
Absolutely.
What's the legacy that Tara Oغرايدي wants to leave?
I have children.
You have 3 of them, yeah?
I have 3 children.
And you have a supporting husband as well. Yeah?
Oh, my goodness. My husband, can you imagine being married to me?
I could have reconsidered. I'm kidding.
I know.
Definitely not.
Right. My poor husband, God bless him. He is an incredible man. He supports.
You are incredible as well.
He supports everything that I'm.
Amazing.
I'm a speck of dust. I'm nothing. Today, I met Abu Ali today, and
who's who used to
he
be
was
the
bodyguard
of
Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah.
And
I met him. He has lost his voice because so many people are speaking to him, so many interviews, and I felt so humbled to be with him, and his heart's broken for his best friend and his leader, you know. And I was reminded when Imam Hussein knew that his brother Abbas had been killed, and he said that it broke his back. And I felt that for Abu Ali today. And I felt really privileged. I was asked to ask him a question, and I asked him, what has inspired? How did Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah inspire his men, you know? And I recounted what I knew about Imam Hussein and Abbas to him. And I mentioned to him that yesterday it was cold here in Beirut yesterday. It was freezing cold. There was snow on the mountains. And people weren't just cold from the weather, they were cold from the shock and from loss. And I felt that, you know, empathetically I felt it. And after the mausoleum, we were going back to the hotel. I was alone with my escort. She's an incredible woman, Zainab. She's an incredible woman. A Lebanese woman. Lebanese women are brilliant. Shia women are brilliant. And this huge man, there were pockets of security all along the roads. And this particular team, they were all in their combat gear, you know, all camouflage. And he saw that I was cold, and I noticed him because he's a giant. I'm looking at him out of the corner of my eye, trying not to let him know that I'm admiring this fantastic character. He reminded me of a bass, you know, and he saw I was cold, and he took off all of his combat gear. Wow. And he took this jacket, and he came over to me, and he handed it to me, and he said, "You're cold, take the jacket." Wow. And I thought, how did Hassan Nasrallah inspire all these people?
So speaking of sacrifices and doing good with others, the example of Abu Ali, who was the bodyguard of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and you were talking about the guy who gave you this jacket, which you were wearing.
Incredible. So, yeah. He was a giant. I will never forget that man. If I ever happened to come across him again, it would be amazing. Wow. He took off his camouflage gear and everything, and he was so discreet, you know. He wasn't making a show of this, you know, I'm being a great man here with this strange Western woman. He took off his camouflage gear and he took off his jacket so discreetly with the other guys around him. He came over to me, he handed me the jacket. He said, "Please take this, you're cold. It's for you."
So you were here to inspire, and you were inspired, and this contributes to your legacy, which is in 20 seconds.
I want to encourage young people to pick up the cause and to fight with whatever capacity that they have to learn about humanity and to alleviate the suffering of innocent people.
Amazing. So 2 times during this episode, you've given the examples of Al-Abbas and Al-Hussein, since you're inspired with the story of Karbala. And Al-Abbas wanted to alleviate the pain of Al-Imam Al-Hussein. Your mission, I guess, it's being very successful in alleviating the pain of the oppressed in the different regions you're visiting. I guess you were born to inspire. Thanks a lot for this inspiring episode in Sardية. As Tara Oghraidi, I was privileged hosting you.
Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for hosting me.
My pleasure.